welcome to the Festival of Storytellers.
I can't tell you how excited I am to be on right now. It's been a couple of weeks of excitement, getting prepared, and I've done a lot of things in my life, but this has got to be close to the top.
Thank you, ReadersMagnet, and thank you, John, for putting this forth and taking the chance on us authors in presenting this out to the world.
I've enjoyed this immensely, Joanne.
Ellie, so have I. Thank you for who you are, and thank you, ReadersMagnet. You all are beautiful, and you've worked so very hard, and we are blessed.
We are.
I thank everybody that's involved with this process, because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers. We thank ReadersMagnet and everybody that's involved. I love ReadersMagnet. They say, we share your stories with the world.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for coming, and thank you for those who possibly are coming back for a second or maybe a third night. I have been on since last Tuesday, so I've done a lot of sessions. Past sessions can be found on my YouTube, which is just under search for Kerry Marzock under YouTube. And you can see them there going back to last Tuesday. I also want to thank ReadersMagnet for putting this on and being so fantastic with me with my books. I very, very much appreciate it a lot. So tonight, it seems like for all these past evenings, even though I've read some poetry, I've primarily been reading some dark horror type poems and some chapters from Raven's Way, Raven's Rage, and Order of the Claw, my 3 novels, which I'll show here at towards the end. And so tonight I think I might want to switch it up a little bit. And my book, Along a Burning Highway, which was just released not too long ago. Great cover. I love the cover so much. And it's actually a compilation of poetry, probably between 30 and 40 poems, 10 short stories, and then the first chapters actually of Raven's Way and Raven's Rage. So one of the things that I also like to write about in short stories and also my poetry, and I'm also working on my first fantasy type horror novel. Got to get that horror in there somewhere, right? That will be titled Scrolls of Sorrow. Maybe I can talk a little bit about that tomorrow night, since it'll be my last night. So tonight I thought I would change it up a little bit and read a fantasy story from Along a Burning Highway. And I think fantasy doesn't have to be only for children or for young adults. Fantasy, I think, belongs to all of us all throughout our life, no matter how old we happen to get, what situations we might be in. I think that we always fantasize maybe about doing things or being other people or living a certain lifestyle. But then even beyond that, I think we fantasize that maybe we are those princesses and princes out there. So tonight I'm going to read, before I run out of time, a story that I wrote titled, If Only Frogs Could Smile. A solitary tear meandered lazily down her right cheek, where it gently merged with one from the other side. Together they converged as one into a larger bead that balanced precariously on the tip of the young woman's exquisitely sculpted chin. Glancing down at the pond, she stared wistfully at the beautiful face floating upon what seemed an endless sheet of glass, a mirror without end, an eternity free of sadness and pain, wondering if she would ever again touch the warmth of such an eternity. She took the tip of her right index finger and wiped at the wetness in a corner of her eye. Then she gently guided a few wayward strands of glistening auburn hair that had fallen in front of her face to lie neatly behind her right ear. The quivering tear broke free, spinning and twirling toward the pearly surface of the water. She knelt upon the lush park grass and softly spread her buttercream-colored skirt with dainty red roses gracing the hemline. Her stoic, emotionless face of beauty was intent only upon seeing a reflection of the tear hovering in midair like a magical crystal sphere, suspended as if in the slowest of motions. But fell it did nonetheless, pointed towards a placid pond of shining water. Its sole purpose was to shatter the lovely early spring stillness that surrounded her. It was simply a pleasant moment in time, one that did not come often for her anymore. After all, happiness had been tragically stolen from her on a day much like this sunny afternoon, exactly 1 year before to the day. The tear violently struck the water, sending shock waves of concentric circles across the small pond, crackling the exquisite beauty of her face. It distorted a vision of loveliness into a caricature of horror. Using the same index finger, she touched the ugly, livid white scar that knifed glaringly down the right side of her face from just above the brow to underneath her chin. Physical pain had fortunately disappeared 6 months ago, replaced with nothing more than an icy cold numbness spread across her otherwise smooth and faultless skin. However, the emotional pain of loneliness and loss would apparently linger forever, sharp pangs of despair part of each lonely, agonizing day. As the shocking water began to stretch out and become placid once again, she tried to smile and then quickly stopped. Stupid girl, she thought, trying to actually have a split second of frivolity, a breath of time when her torment might perhaps flee. Smiling did nothing more than turn the white scar into a fractured lightning bolt, the tortuous pain of seeking forgiveness knifing down her face and neck, pointed towards her anxiously beating heart, which was now and forever constantly broken. Remembering that fateful afternoon was merely one troubled aspect of her daily, zombie-like existence, one she wished that she could forget, but seemingly doomed to live out the curse which had befallen her. As she closed her eyes, trying to forget, but realizing the absurdity of that wish, the sound of croaking frogs echoed inside her thundering mind, the roaring sound always appearing when the nightmare began. It had been an early evening like this one, a blush red sun sinking slowly behind the western horizon. She and Christian, her fiancé, had attended an all-day pool party at her friend Diana's lavish home. She really had a good time, at least until the beer and whiskey chasers had begun to take their toll on Christian. Thank you, Alice. Extremely handsome at slightly over 6 feet, His rugged good looks were the envy of all her friends, especially when he slipped off his shirt and stood upon the diving board, his sculpted arms and stomach glistening under a bright sunlight. She felt her cheeks become pink as she noticed how the tight-fitting swim trunks he wore left absolutely nothing to the female imagination. Hearing startled gasps of desire from many of the other envious young women around the pool was more than just a little satisfying, especially since Christian could have had his choice of any of the girls, but instead had chosen her. Handsome, personable, charming, and financially very successful, he had it all, and she had him, most of the time wrapped around her pretty little finger. Sadly, the one thing he lacked, however, was the ability to control his drinking, and no matter how hard she had tried to slow him down, it had just gotten worse. Now she sat pushing back in the car seat, holding on tightly to the door handle with one hand and seatbelt with the other. Christian swung the steering wheel hard to the left as they careened onto 7th Avenue, the vehicle hurtling down the semi-busy street past Longacre Park on their right side. Fortunately, it was Sunday evening, so any rush hour traffic was not in harm's way. "Chris, please slow down. You're driving like a madman. Somebody is going to get hurt," she uttered loudly. Strain and fear etched clearly in her voice. He laughed, a high-pitched, keening sound, much like a madman would. "Lighten up, baby. Have a little fun. I can always control this car. Christian, you're drunk. Pull over and I'll drive home, please." His head swiveled and he stared at her, a crazed look of anger and mistrust. "Katie, my dear, drunk is in the eye of the beholder, and I'm beholden to nobody. Just sit there, look beautiful, and be quiet." She was stunned, for at no time had he ever spoken to her like this, drunk or sober. For some reason, he was like somebody she had never known before. The thought struck her that maybe there was more to his condition than just booze. Suddenly, a movement caught her attention, and she looked forward. A scream began to build, which erupted from her throat. "Chris, watch out. There's someone crossing the street. You're going to hit them," she yelled shrilly. He turned his head back to the pavement and saw a woman with a small boy holding her hand halfway across the intersection. The red light glared back at him like an accusing eye. Chris shouted something unintelligible and yanked the car to the right. With less than 10 feet to spare, Catherine saw the terrified look on the mother's face as she tried to protect her son from what appeared to be certain injury or possibly death. The out-of-control vehicle jarringly struck the curb and lurched onto a large square cement area erected in front of the pillared entranceway to the park. Since Christian had still not applied the brakes, the car sped forward, doing nearly 50 miles an hour. Catherine screamed, but the screeching sound of metal striking the stone pillar on her side drowned it out. The entire time, which literally was only seconds, Chris attempted to regain control of his BMW, but it was no use. His drunken condition left reflexes and mental capacity nothing but mush. Their lives were now at the mercy of fate. When the car had slammed violently against the stone pillar, Catherine's body had lurched up and forward, even though she was wearing a seatbelt. The top of her head struck the metal strip around the windshield, causing an immediate burst of stars and a flashing stab of pain. Stunned, she fell back onto the seat, feeling like nothing but a rag doll that was now bleeding profusely from a deep gash across the upper part of her forehead. The car now hurtled down a wide sidewalk, which abruptly turned right with a log fence standing impassively in front of them. They smashed into the fence, sending fractured pieces of wood flying in every direction. Ahead was nothing but grass and Long Acre Pond. Christian was now completely dazed and so rubber-armed that steering the BMW was impossible, so thinking enough to press down on the brake pedal was certainly out of the question. Fortunately, his foot was not on the gas, so the car had at least slowed somewhat. The entire time, people who had come to the park to spend a nice spring Sunday afternoon were yelling and screaming, scurrying for safety. The car was like it had been shot forward on a pinball machine, glancing off trash cans and picnic tables. Through a glaze of blood that now dripped in front of Catherine's eyes, she saw a very frail-looking old woman carrying several shopping bags suddenly appear on the grass not more than 20 feet away. The old crone with the long, straggly hair, hooked nose, pointed chin, and beady green eyes stared at the vehicle hurtling towards her. She was far too old to move out of the way quickly enough. Catherine's scream seemed to awaken Christian's senses, and he tried desperately to swerve the car to the right. It was too late to avoid hitting her, but at least it was not head on. Still, her fragile body was thrown up and onto the hood near the driver's side fender, then struck the windshield with extreme force. The old lady's bags were tossed into the air with all of her worldly belongings spraying in all directions. In what seemed like a sudden stopping of motion, Catherine looked through the broken windshield and could have sworn she saw an evil-looking smile with yellow, rotted teeth upon the bag lady's face. Her body rolled off the hood of the car, dumped her like a trash bag onto the park grass. The BMW now headed straight for a large oak tree near the edge of the pond. The vehicle slammed into the tree at the corner of the right fender, shearing the entire side of the car completely off. Catherine sat stunned and exposed, but still trapped to the seat. Christian, on the other hand, had not been wearing a seatbelt, and as the car tilted violently to the left, he was thrown through the windshield towards the grass and the calm waters of Long Park. The car now balanced precariously on the driver's side and slid slowly to a stop close to the water's edge. Even though the seatbelt was still strapped tightly across her chest and shoulder, Catherine had slid somewhat and now hung suspended with the ground at her feet. Completely dazed and numb, she looked through the open, jagged windshield like it was a movie screen. She could see the ugly old crone lying in a heap on the grass, but still struggling to sit up. Catherine also saw Christian's body, bent and bloody, lying partially submerged in the water. It was a scene of pure insanity from a tragic movie running in slow motion. The old hag raised her bloody face and pointed towards Christian, who lay at the edge of the pond with only his head, right arm, and shoulder out of the water. The noise of the crash had nearly deafened Catherine, so all she could see was the old woman pointing towards her fiancé and mouthing some words that sounded like a chant. Suddenly there was a bright burst of light above the water, temporarily blinding Catherine. At the same time, her hearing seemed to return completely, and she heard the breaking of glass. Glancing up, she fearfully saw a large piece of what was left of the passenger door window break free and fall towards her. The very last thing she felt before being carried off to blessed oblivion was the edge of the glass slicing and tearing down the right side of her face. Then, thankfully, there was only darkness. The coming weeks and months were nothing more than a blurred nightmare. It was a tortured period of pain and numbness, both physical and mental. Catherine found out later from her mother that she had been in the hospital for just shy of 8 weeks, most of that in a coma. She also over the coming months became aware of what had taken place, especially after she had blacked out. The old woman had surprisingly survived her extensive injuries, but after a few weeks of being hospitalized, she disappeared one night to the chagrin of the confused medical staff. Catherine had not been much help to them other than flashing moments of memory. Christian lying nearly submerged in the water, the old crone lifting her arm and uttering some words that could not be heard clearly. A blinding flash of light before broken glass tore down the side of her face and carried her away to an ongoing nightmare. Now, exactly 1 year later, Catherine sat against the same oak tree which Christian's BMW had so violently struck. She stared across the smooth water of Longacre Park, feeling emotionless. A sudden sound brought her out of her trance that she had fallen into. She unconsciously touched the ugly scar on the side of her face as it immediately began to tingle like it was alive. She had already been through 2 surgical attempts to remove the scar and regain some semblance of normal life, but when the bandages were removed, the grotesque scar remained. The sound appeared again, and she noticed that a very large frog had come to the water's edge and now sat with a fat body spread on a flat, smooth rock. It croaked softly several times and then moved closer. Catherine attempted to smile and then stopped because the scar seemed to suddenly burn. So, Mr. Frog, can you tell me what happened 1 year ago today? Do you know where my Christian disappeared to? Are you in fact my Prince Charming? Nothing. Silence. Then a ribbit, and the frog with the large black bulging eyes jumped closer. Catherine sighed. Well, even if you knew what happened, how could you tell me? Oh, why do I continue to torture myself so much about this? What's done is done, and my life is sunken to where I now talk to frogs, hoping for answers. So pathetic. She began to rise, and then was startled when the frog leaped upon her skirt, several large rivets making it appear like the small green creature was actually trying to keep her from leaving. Catherine stared at the frog in amazement. Well, this is not only confusing, but somewhat comical. Silence, then 3 more rivets as the frog moved even closer. Wait a minute, what's going on here? She inquired. My life has been a nightmare. So now am I supposed to kiss you? Why in the world would you want somebody as ugly as me to kiss you? Ribbit, ribbit, ribbit. Well, I suppose it wouldn't hurt since nobody else had asked us for a kiss recently. Oh, come here. The frog leaped onto her hand, and she was surprised at how heavy he was. All right, Mr. Frog, or Prince, whatever your name is, please allow me to try and put a smile on your lips. She brought a small creature forward and kissed it on top of the head instead, not wanting to risk the frog sticking out a long, flickering tongue. However, whether it was a charade or a dream, a shower of yellow sparkles and bright light appeared. It temporarily blinded her, almost painfully, yet covered her in a soft blanket of pearly white mist. When the tingling stopped, she realized her eyes had been tightly closed. Her hands were still spread, palms facing the sky, but the frog was now gone, and only the placid pond was in front of her. Strange. This is all way too weird. I agree, said a voice from behind her. Very strange and very weird appeared a strong, masculine voice. Hello, Kate. Startled, she leaped to her feet and spun quickly around. In a state of shock, Catherine began backing up towards the water's edge. Careful, Katie, you'll fall into the water, Christian said softly, not wanting to frighten her more than she was. It's not possible, she muttered. This is a dream. More of my nightmares. It's not fair. How can this be, Chris? Where have you been all this time? I thought you were dead. Your body had disappeared. He smiled and chuckled softly. You wouldn't believe me right now, even if I told you, Catherine. But I'm back now, and it was your kiss, those sweet lips, that made it happen. I've missed you so much. She backed away, her right hand covering the scar on her cheek. No, please go away, Christian. I'm so ugly, deformed. No man could ever want me again. He moved quickly, putting his strong hands on her shoulders. She thought he was so handsome standing there, wearing the same clothes he had worn the day of the accident. My dearest Catherine, you are as exquisitely beautiful now as the first day we've met. No, you're just saying that because you don't want to hurt me. This cursed scar is ugly. I should leave. Please release me, Christian, and let me go. What scar? He asked. My dear Catherine, look down into the water. There is no scar, sweetheart. You are as radiantly beautiful today as you were then. She glanced down and saw her reflection. It was gone. How is this possible? I haven't smiled in a whole year. He lovingly stroked the smoothness of her right cheek. Believe me, I haven't smiled either. Some things are just unexplainable. What apparently happened because of the old lady I hit that day. I have so missed your smile, and I'm so very deeply sorry for your pain that I've caused. As they strolled away from the pond, locked tightly together, arm in arm, the only sound in the air that was this beside that of the chirping songbirds and the beat of their own hearts was the symphony of croaking frogs. Across the park, on the other side of the pond, behind some trees, stared two small, beady green eyes set above the flash of yellow rotted teeth. The old woman smiled and moved forward, toting her large bags, for it was time to feed the frogs again. Ribbit, ribbit, ribbit. That's it. So I hope you enjoyed that. JMI, your cover designs are just realistically cool. Have you ever thought of having them as a mascot or any souvenirs? It has. I actually do have some large poster size um, of the covers, and that's a good idea, though. Thank you for bringing that up. That would be a good idea to have those covers available, and they are good. And I've had some strong input in each of the covers, like the cover of Raven's Rage. Let me show these books before we run out of time. This is my first Raven novel, Raven's Way, Raven's Way. That is the Philadelphia skyline in the background with the wolves standing up and howling at the moon. This is the second follow-up, Raven's Rage, Order of the Claw. And that picture there I took at Eastern State Penitentiary. And this is my alien novel titled The Reptilian Factor, taking place in Tucson, Arizona. Alice, do you have any pictures of the story you've read? Oh, you know what, Alice? I don't, and that would be a great idea. So if anybody out there, would like to contact me, you can reach out to me on Facebook. Just search my name, Kerry Marzock, author. I also have 2 pages out there, so you'll find me either way. I also have a website available, www.kerrymarzock.com. And you can go there and read poetry, short stories, 5 first chapters of books, 2 of them not published yet. One of them being my fantasy novel I hope to be released next year, which is called Scrolls of Sorrow. And the books are available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. I also have copies here at my house that I can autograph and mail out to you. You can just reach out to me through Facebook, Kerry Marzock on Facebook, and I'll come right up. Also on YouTube, if you go out under my name to search for Kerry Marzock, you'll see a really, really awesome book trailer for Raven's Way. It's not very long. It's only about 36, 38 seconds, but it is fantastic. And I think if you see that trailer, you're definitely going to want to read the book. I think I'm out of time. I've probably definitely gone over. So if there are any other questions maybe that I didn't get a chance to answer, maybe there's a couple minutes left to put them up and I can read them. So I guess that might be it. I want to thank everybody for stopping in. I will be here tomorrow night from 6:30 to 7. I think it's going to be my last night. The Festival of Storytellers has been great. It has really given me something that I haven't done in a very, very long time. I've had radio interviews, but not like this. Alice, so you are planning to publish more? Any more characters you have in mind? Scrolls of Sorrow is going to be my first full-length fantasy novel. There is some horror in there too. I cannot give up my werewolves and vampires, but it is definitely going to have some great characters in it. It's going to be in a land that is beyond this land, this earth. And I definitely have the third Raven novel started. I don't know how long that's going to take. Probably definitely another year, if not, hopefully sooner. And I ended the reptilian factor, which I like to do in all my books, with the possibility of a second book there as well. I also have a novel written, actually. I'm just going over it. I'm not going to give the title out right now, but it is about a serial killer that reaches out through a person's nightmares. And it's got quite a few twists and turns. So that, I think, actually will be the next one I have released. So all right, I think there's 1 minute left. Again, I want to thank everybody tonight in the scene, behind the in the stage, behind the background. Thank you so much for putting this on. Again, I want to thank Readers Magnet. I want to thank you all for tuning in. I had fun. I hope you enjoyed the story. It was a little long, so we'll see what I can do tomorrow night. And I think that's it. So I want to thank everybody very much, and I hope to hear from you on Facebook. So good night, everybody.